Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It has been a very, very good night. Sorry we're a day late with the show, but my work got in the way of essentially doing something last night, and between that and my daughter's dance, it just wasn't gonna work. And I didn't want to rush everything, so that way you guys would feel uncomfortable, or it would be like, what the hell is he talking about? Any of those things. If you notice, I got my white wall of shame corrected. I got some, cool pictures. Maybe I'll do a step pic later. I got some of my signed posters on the wall, so I was pretty excited about that. But other than that, it's kind of been a crazy week in politics, and tonight we have kind of a mixed bag. I decided to pick on Canada a little bit, as well as, the United States, because Keith can't seem to give me a good Canadian article. So I had to pick on one to kind of say, hey, are we sure Canada is all that great? But without further ado, let's bring in the two chuckleheads, Buddy the Elf and Hazel the Engineer.
Is that chuckleheadish enough for you? Are you not entertained?
I am not.
Well,
how are you tonight, fellas?
The best I can do. Tired.
I'm good.
It's my Monday, and already it's been a long week.
I will say that this week I got hit hard out of just life in general. I don't know. Most of the time, Monday is kind of everybody waking up from the weekend. Maybe you had a little too much fun. No, dude. Monday started with feet on the ground and 60 miles an hour. I don't know. It's just like this week seems like it's just hit the ground, just full bore right out of the get go. So I'm gonna guess that it's gonna be a little bit longer week than usual. But it's been life is just it's kind of like on cruise control in general right now. I don't know about your lives. Like, we've got the COVID protocols. We're waiting for the vaccine. The neighborhood is kind of sort of whatever. I've got neighborhood watch ladies complaining and like tapping on your door. Like, I can't believe they're doing that, but they're walking up and down because they don't want to change the streets. They're gonna narrow the road down and create a walkway and connect all the parks and stuff. It sounds like an amazing thing to have on your road. And like, there's people like, we don't want people coming down our roads. We have to lock our cars because they're stealing stuff. You're a moron, and I hope you get your stuff stolen. It's
just
like,
lock your car. If you're that concerned, who
I know.
cares, right?
Well, they put up a sign at the end of the road. It's like, lock your stuff and your belongings, or you will lose it. And the people are like, that's bad. That means criminals are coming in, and so they don't want the walkway, the path that like connects to all the parks, because it's going to bring people that are going to break into our houses and cars and all that. It's like, I don't know. It's just like, it's what you would expect from an old white people street that I live on, but still.
So Park A and Park B are going to be connected through your neighborhood, right? Now, my question is, to get from A to B, how many miles is it? Because we do understand criminals are not going to come and search your cars from going to Park A to Park B. That's a lot of fucking work. They might drive their car at the end of your street and do it, but they sure as hell are not going to walk from Park A all the way over to Park B. They're not going to do that. That's silly.
If they're going to come into neighborhoods to start, pulling on door handles, that's what they do around here. Is they'll be in a nice neighborhood, and someone will walk through the neighborhood and just pull on all the door handles. And if someone's car's unlocked, they'll just swipe whatever they can grab quick.
Who the fuck
It's the thing that they've had problems with.
Have you met people? People are awful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
we're
have.
right on the
I'm-
edge of like a nice. I'm right on the edge of like a nice enough neighborhood that is enough away in the rural area where people don't lock their houses. My
Yeah.
wife's family, the first time I ever went to their house, they're like, "Yeah, just we're not home. Just go ahead and go in." And I'm like, "How do I do that?" There goes the door's unlocked. It's not locked. We live in a
Yeah,
little
we don't
farm
lock our
town. The door's
doors
unlocked.
either.
It's fine.
Well, I do. I lock my
That's
front door,
insane.
but my front door is easily because it's an automatic, like it's one of those special weird
Holds up a
deadbolts.
picture of his address.
No, please
Holds up a
don't.
sign of his address. Here comes
Well,
the people.
I'll tell you what. I have a dog. I actually have 2 dogs, but I have one dog that you will not like that. When you make that decision to walk into that house, if that dog don't know you and
Yeah.
I'm not out there, I'm pretty sure you're screwed.
Yeah.
And it's like I have a dog similar
Yeah.
to yours, Hannah. It's not technically a pit bull, but it's like a mix of German Shepherd, pit bull, and like a lab type thing. I mean, and
He's a
people
beefy
think he's a
dog.
pit bull. Yeah, and he's got that
Yeah.
brindle coat, so he's black. You ain't gonna see the dog when you come in. And my kitchen lights right now are all fucked up because I bought and replaced my fluorescents with like these LEDs because I thought, oh hey, that would be a smart thing to do, right? You know, like environmentally friendly. I got to replace the ballast anyway. Well, 3 years later, they both went out, except for the one still works. But when you turn it on, it looks like a horror movie in my kitchen. The other one doesn't work right now. I gotta get new ones. But the one does. But it'll flicker like a horror movie. Like it's bad, and it starts out really low. And so like if they tried to turn the light on to like get the dog to stop, it would be like a horror movie, and then you would just be scared. You'd be like, what the fuck, you know? I mean, I sleep with a bat by my bed anyway, so you know, and I don't sleep very heavily for the most part, at least in the middle of the night. So unless you get me on a night I got really wasted, you're probably out of luck. So if you don't got a gun and you're just casually doing this, I think there's a problem. But
I don't know. If you break into my house and nobody else is here, you can probably climb into bed next to me. I ain't gonna hear none of it. So
but your dogs will. Won't your dogs do something about it?
I
They don't
can't hear
care?
my dogs barking unless they come up here and like hit me or whatever.
But won't
I
your
don't know. So
dog
like
bite them?
maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I
They're
think
good
they
at being
might.
scary. They're good at being noisy and scary, but I don't know if they would bite. They've never really been tested. I don't know. You want to come try?
Probably not. I don't know. I've met your dogs before. They might not care.
Yeah, Hitch is 90 pounds now. That dude can move some meat. He's a big dude. So I don't know. He went to the vet the other day and knocked over one of the nurses or technicians or whatever attendees. Yeah. So they were like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's been a pretty good weekend, and life is just kind of moseying along. I'm waiting for the snow to melt. We had a good melt today. It was 42 degrees. Got rid of a lot of snow. I'm happy about
I
that.
know.
I'm done with winter this year. I'm done
Same
with
here.
it, man.
I'm happy when it starts to warm up again, so I can start going back out to my smoker and my grill. I sent you all the photos of the meat that I bought. Oh yeah, you gotta start planning.
all my seed bags, I have like 50 different kinds of seeds here. I got all these plans for the year, and I can't do nothing yet. Bring on that heat. Bring on the heat. That's what I say.
Fair enough. Speaking of heat, we have a first today, or not today, but we do have a first.
Man.
Like to close your eyes and just imagine yourself sitting on the surface of Mars and listening to the surroundings. If I could have the first one, please.
So for those of you listening on a podcast versus watching the YouTube video, we are playing the first sounds of Mars.
So that gentle whirl that happens in the background, that is a noise made by the rover. But yes, what you did hear 10 seconds in was an actual wind gust on the surface of Mars, picked up by the microphone and sent back to us here on Earth. The analysis indicates that was around a 5 meter per second type of wind gust. So we can sit here now and actually tell you that we have recorded sound from the surface of Mars. So we have a second one, which basically further reduced the noise of the rover so you can just hear what the wind would sound like on Mars. And once again, I invite you to sit back and have a listen to what it would sound like to be on Mars.
That's crazy, right?
That's insane. That's so cool. I mean, it's something. It's could be so easily replicated on Earth, but there's just something so profound. Like that's literally so far away. I can't even comprehend what it would take for me to be there to hear that myself. You know,
And
it's
for all
just, I
these
don't know.
simpletons in the for all the simpletons in the United States, 5 meters per second is 11.18 miles per hour. So Keith was probably like, "Oh yeah, I know that thing."
That's yeah. Actually, what's so funny though is as you're playing that, I know I kind of sent it a little late, but Tanner, the soundbite that I just sent you, that's exactly what I keep expecting somebody to play at some point in time, just to troll, just because it would be funnier than hell to play that, to hear all the science nerds go, "Wait a second, I know that sound," because I have had that sound broadcasted in my brain. And Tanner looks like he might actually be entertaining my shenanigans for just because he can.
See if we can't catch a YouTube flag.
Hey, I gotta start from the beginning.
If this isn't an insanely beautiful woman, I'm hanging it.
There we go. That's the alien signal from Independence Day.
Yes.
So when they're I don't know. Hannah's just like, I don't know.
I honestly didn't remember that scene.
Really?
I have a weird memory.
I've only
for this
seen
shit.
Independence Day a couple of times. I do too, but that movie just didn't hit my sweet spot quite like Bill Pullman being president for a couple of minutes. I don't know. It just didn't work.
There's every Independence Day, like, just because of the movie, I have to listen to that speech, just because it's like the annual amp up, just because it's like, it's so well written, and you know it's never gonna happen, but if it did, you know
but
that somebody.
All right.
It can't be delivered by Lone Star.
Because if
it can't be delivered by Lone Star.
It would be a fantasy about Doom, because it would be like Hell on Mars come to Earth. Like, I get you're hearing, like, I don't know what they call that, where you feel connected, but in my world, like, the first thing I think of with Mars and sounds are the screams of a demon coming out and murdering somebody, and the cackle of that doctor in Doom 3. And yes, it probably doesn't help that I've been playing Doom 3. Because they released it on the PlayStation, ironically enough, and it was like $3. I was like, well, player's gonna play, right? I guess, like, that's an old game, and my kid thinks I'm crazy. He's like, I can't believe you're playing this old game. It's like, yeah, it's a classic. It's like,
dude,
it was on the Xbox.
I played it too. I played it too over when I had COVID over basically Christmas break or whatever for me, and like I just booted up an old disc. I had the old disc. I booted them all up. There's a bunch of mods that you can get where you can basically upgrade all of the graphics to maximize, like, as fast as your machine can handle, and it did a nice job. I was surprised, and so like I had what would be considered maybe a quality PS3, early PS4 quality graphics upgrade to a game that was old, and it was an enjoyable game. It was way darker and serious compared to, like, you know, the new Doom Eternal stuff, which is just like turned up to 11. Like, that one was like if Silent Hill and Resident Evil and Doom kind of had this weird threesome, and that was the baby that came out of the stomach.
But I don't know. Anyway, so let's go back to Mars and the discovery, and we don't have to spend a lot of time. I was just excited. I wanted to start out with this week with good news, and since we usually ramble for 10 to 15 minutes anyway, I kind of cut us off and said, hey, let's talk a little bit about Mars. And we did this a couple of weeks ago, but the reason this is exciting is because we have never heard anything from Mars before. The possibilities of what can happen now. I mean, it's going to record all this audio on top of the video. So now we're going to get all of this extra data. And then it's just like, yeah, you know what? I don't think there's life on Mars, and that's fine. Like, I'm not going to ever like think that until we can demonstrate it. But at the exact same time, it's neat to be able to experience a place I would love to go to get away from society, you know, but you can't because it doesn't exist unless you're a millionaire or Elon Musk, you know, like one of the two. But I would, you know, like I would love to go to another planet. Like I'm way too big for that. like I'm wide, fat, and tall, and so there's no way in hell I'm gonna be able to ever like go to the moon, even if I wanted to. Like it's a non-existent thing unless they make interstellar travel with, you know, like for the common folk.
The current math that I've seen, the most recent numbers that I've seen was $100,000 a pound to the moon and $1 million a pound to Mars.
Yeah, I ain't got that kind
Actually,
of
that kind of markup's not too bad if you think about it. It only costs you 10 times as much to get to Mars than it does the moon. Like,
mostly it's,
I mean, I guess it's
most
just
of the
to get
energy,
there, but-
much of the energy and cost is just getting out of the Earth's atmosphere. That's the most expensive part, and then that's only a one-way trip too. They're not, that money doesn't count getting you home.
You ain't coming back. And I'll tell you what, maybe if I have cancer, like, you know, I'll go to the moon, you know, and you can leave me there. I'm going to die anyway. Like right when I'm getting close to death, just send me to the moon. I'm okay. No, I don't want you to come to my funeral and stare at a dead body anyway. I'm just going to donate it to science. So like the difference is you won't get ashes to cremate. Whatever. So be it. I'll die on the fucking moon. You know, like you can say
me
I'm
to
the
the
first
moon.
guy that died on the moon.
Let me die amongst the stars.
You should read a book Robert Heinlein wrote. It's called "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress." Awesome book about the moon. Probably my favorite, like off-world book I've ever read. So like the idea of like humans on a different body in space, communicating, connected like as humans and Earthlings and all that kind of stuff. The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. It's such a good book, dude.
All right, yeah, I'll have to look that up. I've never read that, so that's
Heinlein's stuff is hit or miss for me. Like his Forever War is one of my favorite books of all time. Moon's a Harsh Mistress is really good. There's another one of Stranger from a Strange Land. Everybody loved it. I had a hard time with it, but either way, Heinlein wrote some good stuff. Very distinctly, in a weird style.
Well, on to our next topic.
Red, so much red.
Yeah, well, that's what happens if you want to see good old Canada. That's how that works. The only way to give you a full view is to remove us all from the stream. Anyway, I probably shouldn't have done that. But
oh well.
So Keith, this article came up in my.
I want to hear you say that word, Chris. I want to hear you say the name of that place.
Saskatchewan.
Man, I thought you could.
No, I'm not gonna butcher it.
Yeah, it's close enough.
Look.
Usually
it's Saskatchewan. Now you're gonna make me nervous, and I'm gonna butcher it. Saskatchewan. It's Saskatchewan. That's what the fuck it is. Saskatchewan. And I know this because I like a lot of hockey, or I used to, and I do a lot of hockey stuff. So I know Canada. Now, here's the trick. Like in Michigan, we can put our hand up and like show you where it is. Keith, on the map of Canada, on your hand, can you show us where Saskatchewan is?
Hang on 1 sec. All right, so we're gonna go with
you gotta go opposite.
This here is the east, and this is the west, and so BC, and then Quebec and the Maritimes, and lots of lobsters and things. And so if we're talking like Vancouver is right here, then this little freckle right here, this is gonna be Victoria, and then if you just come this way, then you'll get to Calgary. Calgary's right about here. Saskatchewan's gonna be like right about here.
So is Saskatchewan more liberal
north
than
of the Dakotas?
Calgary?
No.
Okay.
No. So actually, Corey is from Saskatchewan. And as he was saying, like they're pretty hardcore conservative there as well. The prairies, for some reason, I don't know what it is about being in the prairies that draws out the conservative bootlicking types, but for some reason, because I mean, like you see it in the Babel Belt, you got all the hardcore conservatives, and I don't really understand it, but I guess when you don't have a lot of beautiful landscape, like
it's a
a lot of
spacing
beautiful
thing. It's a diversity
Maybe?
thing. It's spacing
but
and
like,
diversity and experience of culture, and the people in those areas typically don't travel as
so
much. They're less
are you saying that our
metropolitan.
minds tend to
There's a
wander too
whole
much? Like
bunch of
it's just a
reasons.
lot of flat land?
No,
Actually,
you
it's
just stay there. You just don't go anywhere else. You're like, this is good. I'm gonna stay right here.
yeah. I'm done. I'm not going anywhere.
All right.
This is
So
Yeah.
where are the guys from Letterkenny from? What part of Canada?
so that's Ontario.
Okay, so they're
Mhm.
in the more liberal state, I guess,
Yeah.
that we call it. Are they called
Yeah.
states up there? What do you call it? Like
Provinces.
territories,
Provinces. Yeah.
kingdoms? Maybe they're kingdoms still.
Yeah. So, Chris, Ontario.
Oh God, Kenny wishes.
Ontario is like an extension to most people. It's understanding of Windsor and like Michigan too, and all that kind of like
Yeah, I've
the
been to
closeness
Ontario.
between.
Yeah.
Yes, multiple times. I
Yeah,
love
it seems right.
I
So
love
this is-
Canada. Like it's pretty fucking cold. This year it's pretty cold here in Michigan. And if you
Yeah.
weren't so fucking cold, buddy, I literally would love to live in Canada because everybody's nicer and
Aw.
they
That's the
have really
thing,
good
dude.
maple
Every time
syrup.
Keith talks to us, he tells us about a new place in Canada that's full of a whole bunch of people that sound like they live in Kentucky, which is exactly what's
That is
probably
true.
going to
That's
happen
fucking
here
true.
right now.
I mean,
So, like,
you talk
I'm
about what
gonna
you know,
guess,
right?
like, Canada's performance, the persona they put on, is like, hey, and then apparently, as soon as you drive out of the city, it gets rough quick. Like what's going on in this story? The only thing I know is that it's basically First Nations territories, and a
Yeah.
uranium mining group is looking to just do
Yeah.
weird like exploratory things.
Yeah, this had
Is
kind of
that what they
crossed
call
my.
that nowadays? I'm pretty sure the kids don't call it weird exploratory things. They have to have like a nickname for it.
Dick
Oh, come
dingers?
Anyway,
Yeah, as far as
The kids.
encroachment on lands that are tended to by indigenous people. Oh, we just lost Hannah. Interesting. As far as conflicts between big corporations and indigenous peoples, where the corporations are encroaching on their lands, this one is frighteningly tame, or I guess almost embarrassingly tame. In the to have to realize that, especially when you take a look at like what went on at Wet'suwet'en, like a year ago. God, when was that? It just seems like every couple of months we have some other big show of force against indigenous peoples just standing up for themselves. But what happened in this case, at least as far as my understanding goes, it seems that there's the uranium company. I think it's called Baseload Energy Corporation here. They had a bunch of permits to try to go and do their uranium thing on this land, which is of course tended to by the First Nations community, the Birch Narrows Dene Nation, I want to say, Dene. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. But essentially, so they had been in talks, and things seemed to be in really good faith at first, and they seemed to be really respectful of the fact that it was their land. They stewarded there, took care of it, and had lived there for countless generations. And then one day they found that there were this is where I get a little bit foggy as to what exactly they saw. It seems that they found officials working on there. And I've just been trying to read this because I haven't done too much digging
into
into it.
survey crew. That's what
Yeah.
because they're surveying. I'm guessing.
Oh, okay.
They're surveying to essentially see because the uranium deposits, right? So they want to
Yes.
find the uranium deposits, but they don't understand what's being protected, right? So, like in America, it's kind of similar to like when they wanted to put that pipeline in out west. You have to be very careful because there's a lot of sacred land, and like to the native, the natives of the of your empire or your providence, whatever you call it. So, I'm sorry, I'm gonna fuck with you all this whole time. But
it's okay.
when
Constitutional
you talk about,
monarchy.
Constitutional monarchy. But when you have different land, people take that a lot more seriously. Like again, in Michigan, people wanted to put a pipeline between Canada and Michigan, and maybe next week we could talk a little bit about it because Biden shot that whole thing down, right? And a lot of people are pissed. There's a lot of people on both sides of the fence pissed off. I'm excited because, like, to me, it's like, why the fuck are we dependent on fossil fuel? I get this would make us less dependent on the Middle East, but we don't need, unless you're going to tell me this is going to reduce my gas costs by 50%. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't give two fucks about who gets my money. No offense, Canada. Like, who cares? To me, let's look at green alternatives. But we had that episode, and I already had my time to, bitch about it. But that's essentially what these people are worried about is the wildlife in that area. They're worried about their land being disrespected. They're worried about this crew, wants to build cell towers for the community.
Well, they had offered to build one as kind of a peace offering, or at least that's how they described it. But they of course the community that lived there, they said no, that's not really a priority of ours. What you did was, you had been acting in good faith, you were showing us respect, and then all of a sudden we find you on our lands jumping the gun before we had explicitly said, it's okay, we just you're free, or you're welcome to do what you're going to do within these boundaries. And that's been kind of the great bigger issue. And I completely understand the upset at this, because honestly, First Nations people are always brushed aside as far as land title and treaty conservation, those types of things. As far as those go, First Nations people always get the shaft. I mean, actually, who am I kidding? That's being nice about it. They always get screwed. They're the last to be thought of. They're the first to be, be violently removed, that type of thing. If they stand up and they, peacefully protest, police will always show up, and with an excessive force and provoke a fight almost inevitably every single time, as was what happened with Wet'suwet'en. But with this one, they caught it right before, the big issue started. They had started breaking ground and all of that. And I understand the company is dealing with a short time frame, because one thing that they need the ground to be frozen in order for them to do what they're doing. But again, they hadn't fully received the consent of the people who stewarded the land and just kind of assumed. So things got a bit tense. As far as Canadians
they kept saying
go,
they had all the provincial permits.
They
kept saying we have all the permits. But in all reality, the next step is, after having all the permits, the next step, the city and everybody has to communally say, okay, so why say I got the permits? If you're going to piss the city off and piss the people off, then you're just assuming that even if the people are upset, you can just step over them. And so this is probably an executive decision made with some backpedaling that's happening now.
Yeah, it definitely is. They seem to have been tested in the waters, trying to see if they could push a little bit. But I'm not 100% sure the motives behind it. If it was just somebody got a little panicky and pushed or whatever. But essentially, of course, under the Canadian Constitution, the Indigenous people have the final say to their land. Like, just because you have the permits does not necessarily mean you can just do whatever the hell you want. You also have to consult the people who, have the rightful claim to what goes on that land, because they have been there for generations. They've, bonded with the ecosystem. They've been an active part of it, because one of the big issues, or one of the big things that they mentioned is, there are trap lines that have been in existence there for generations. I think the chief was saying, they have no idea, or it's just been there for, repeating myself now, it's been passed down from generation to generation. And that's, of course, where they've gone to do their hunting so that they can feed their families. It's it's a very significant plot of land, and that's the type of thing that is always brushed to the side and always given the least consideration when it comes to permits and developing land, as colonist attitudes tend to do. And all in all, it's the big thing is that fortunately it did not reach the point where it was extensively violent, but that doesn't mean that there weren't lines crossed. And now it seems that both sides have stepped back. The blockade that was there, the First Nations people have taken the blockade down, but they are doing more patrolling just to make sure that they're not seeing more people from this corporation coming through and doing work that they didn't get permission for, essentially. So it is frustrating.
It's interesting. One of the things that's interesting is the arguments that you laid out there. Like this is where we've done this is our land. This is where we've done our thing. This is where we've trapped for generations. This is how we've lived. Why we don't want to change. Essentially, this is where and what we've chosen and how we've chosen to live. These are the exact same arguments that you hear from the podunk farmer class, the white Canadian farmers, but also the white American farmers who say, this is our land, this is our lives, this is our livelihood, this is the way we've always lived.
Yeah.
We don't think it should be changed. The argument is given validity and given a beautiful, oh, it's so great from the conservative media on this topic, but they will crap all over a Native American and a First Nations protest over the exact same thing. And that's what frustrates me here is that these people are saying the exact same things that dirt farmers are saying all over the place, but they don't get taken seriously and they get laughed at and spit on because they want to do the same thing. Or is it just because their skin's a different color or their culture is a different culture or their religion's a different religion? In some cases, not even all. Sometimes these are full-blooded Christians in this. They've been converted. Like it's ironic and it's kind of sad in the end because it's the same argument.
Oh, wholeheartedly. So if you read down in the article there, the province does kind of do a dick move, and they do say, or they remind them that deliberately blocking crown lands, and this is of course in response to the blockade, deliberately blocking crown lands is illegal and could be referred to the RCMP, which is just a way of saying if you try to impede upon the corporate growth of what we want, even though it's rightfully your land, even by our constitution, we're just going to send in the popo and then we're going to send you guys on a moonlight tour, which is a horrible thing. Yeah. And it's absolutely atrocious to even refer to it like that, because you sit there and you go, that doesn't mean a damn thing, especially because we're talking about you're infringing upon people's rights that you've already trampled on for generations and have repeatedly acted as though have no significance because they should just get over it. Kind of ironic coming from the most sensitive group of human beings on the planet.
The crown found lands, maybe.
Stolen lands might be a better way of explaining, but yeah, basically.
No,
so it's
the queen's upper lip can't handle that terrible S word.
Oh dear. Yeah, so here's hoping that it does not escalate the way we have seen other conflicts. As you guys may remember, a few weeks ago or months ago, I guess I was mentioning there was violence in Nova Scotia with the people out there, and a name that I swear if I try to pronounce it off the top of my head, I'm going to end up butchering. So yeah, it's definitely worth paying attention to, simply for the fact that this could be setting precedent for the way these matters get handled in the future, because it's showing that it's not escalating to violence right off the bat. However, it is people standing up right away, and because we've seen now that this company has overstepped itself, now are they going to continue this? Is this them just trying to see what kind of coverage they'll get in terms of the how bad would we look type of thing? No, I haven't done a lot of digging into this company because, again, this story did cross my view and I was kind of aware of it, but I've been going through a couple of other things and dealing with a couple of other fires going on in have not been the most aware of my surroundings. But whether
I
or not
know
this
it's
company
fine.
has
weird.
known
The
TV.
Some
Michigander knows the
people,
Canadian stuff. I don't know,
Yeah, I
man.
was kind of
no,
impressed
no,
when
no,
you pulled
no,
this one up.
well, this was actually one of the top stories in Google this week. So it's like he
I was
found
trending on Reddit.
found a pretty bright star.
Mm.
Yeah, I saw that's where I saw it too.
Yeah,
I
don't
mean,
do
Oh,
yourself a
man.
favor. If you find the Reddit post, don't scroll down through the comments because it's so funny because I hear so many conservative talking heads here. They lament and complain, oh, you spend so much time on Reddit, you turn into a socialist. And I'm like, you have not spent a lot of time on Reddit, have you? No, you have not.
I mean, you know how many stupid conservative columns are on Reddit? Like, it's.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on.
Well, see, Reddit, but the thing is like if you just go to the places on Reddit that you get when you start a new account, all of the starter pages, they're all just terrible. They're horrible. If you looked at some more of the unique stuff, you can find some great little communities and
Oh,
great
yeah.
little places, just like groups on Facebook. It's the same kind of thing. And so like it's like scrolling down after you watch a video on YouTube. Or like
Just don't
scrolling
do
down,
it.
I saw an awesome thing the other day. It's don't scroll down from a video of your local news station because then you will learn how racist your city is. And I'm like,
God, yeah.
because I've done that. I remember Wood TV 8 and WZZN 13, I think, is Grand Rapids. I used to be like, oh, cool, there's a thing, and then it's just on the bottom, it's like somebody making an announcement about the bus line, and people are like, yeah! And I'm like, it's the bus line. What is wrong with you people? But
so many.
I don't know.
Oh, I had to be I was going through their just kind of flipping through the conservatives Facebook because they were posting stuff about updates for our COVID restrictions, and there was somebody who was sitting there talking about immigrants, and I'm like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? And literally it was
All of the
just an
diseases
attack at
come from
immigrants,
other
and I'm like,
people.
you're a racist piece of garbage,
Ugh.
and what the hell is wrong with you? Like, don't sit there and be like, not to be racist, but just admit it. Just go full out and say like, I'm trying to be racist here, or don't even try to hide it. Just don't even bother acknowledging it. Just be like, well, I think it's this. Just don't sit there and be like, well, I'm not trying to be racist, because we all know you're not. We all know that's garbage. You're wasting air by even saying that. Just get to the point so we can tell you you're an asshole sooner.
Fair enough. Speaking of assholes and stuff like that, we have our answering conservative questions by three assholes who are on the left. So, I don't know.
Oh, God, I didn't study for this.
Welcome to our answering conservative questions hour. We essentially this is a surprise for the guys tonight, so I did not put it in the doc on purpose. And this is kind of a softball, but again, I've been interacting on the Ask a Liberal subreddit, right? Because it's pretty fun. There's a lot of people on that subreddit, and I found it entertaining, and it gives me a place to post the show sometimes. I'm just saying, a little bit of a self-promotion. But this question has come up more than one time, and I thought as a kind of a good way to mix up the show tonight, we would ask the question. So the question came, do you support the government pressuring TV providers to ban or suppress media companies they don't like?
Wow.
I haven't really seen a whole lot of that.
No. It's not whether you've seen it or not.
Oh.
It's do you support it? Like,
no.
Do you
Okay,
as
like
an individual
if
support
I saw this happening. Yeah,
Yes.
if I saw that happening, yeah, no. I would probably not particularly like that, because the idea, like, one of the ideas that you're looking at when it comes to the idea of freedom of speech and keeping as much of it as possible, with keeping very, very aggressive and destructive things as like the few places in our conversation, our lexicon, that we cannot talk about. So you talk about the European model, essentially the Nazis and Nazification, and those specific words have been legally ostracized from society. Having a few things along those lines when it comes to that kind of thing, like if a news station was doing something on that, but if it was just like a bipartisan leaning from the government onto a news station because of content, I wouldn't like that. But if it was a government saying, we're going to start enforcing the fairness doctrine, we're going to start enforcing the equal time doctrine, the Equal Time Act, I believe it is, where you have to give equal time to politicians who are running for the same positions, and the fairness doctrine, where we no longer enforce that, which is essentially where you had to provide an opposing view of whatever statement you put out. That was destroyed by the late and horrifyingly, thank goodness he's in the ground, Rush Limbaugh. That was essentially obliterated by American AM talk radio, where we used to, if you presented a position, Bill thinks this is bad, and you also had to say, well, John thinks this is also good, and like they were saying that was infringing on their rights. Fox and Newsmax and those groups, they don't do that. I do think that should be a thing in journalism that should be required, and if they refuse to do that, then maybe we could start saying things like, you don't get your licensing renewed until you can not be completely partisan and biased in your reporting. That would be cool. That would be a change in the level of the way our journalistic free speech works out. But like if it was just partisan stuff saying, you're red, I'm blue, I don't like you because of whatever, then I have issues with that. But if it's done in an organized fashion where we start saying, no, these little rules for all media and all news, but also Fox and Newsmax, you guys violate this almost exclusively and without question or without qualm. So then we're gonna start trying to change what you do. Then I could support it. But in the end, the way it kind of seems and the way the question is written, it's a little bit more like it's democratically pressured, which I would say no, as long as it's a universal thing that goes across the board. So even CNN, when they lean a little too hard in one direction, they would also receive the exact same reprimands.
All right, fair enough.
On the one, like I'm very against this idea of the government like interfering. Like this sounds almost a little bit like thought police. The problem is, and one of the complications that I see with it is actually brought up in the CNBC article that was attached to this Reddit post, because I figured I had a couple of seconds while Hannah was talking, so I played with Google's there. And one of the problems that they raise is the fact that we do see this extremist and inflammatory media almost. And I mean, Trump was guilty of suppressing media he did not like. He would not give press credentials to anybody who didn't actively kiss his ass every second with every question. And that's a big problem, right? Because where do we see that type of media manipulation? Let's talk about some of the dictators, right? So sitting there and saying that, no, you can't come here because you ask me questions that I don't like. And he never had a solid argument. He just always sat there and said, no, they're attacking me. No, they're attacking me. Anytime anybody said anything remotely critical, it was, oh, they're the worst people ever. Even when Fox News dared to not blindly and frothingly salivate all over his ass crack, he turned on them. He turned on them in an instant like that. And that's simply because it wasn't about, putting forth the right information. That was about him. That was about controlling the narrative. And that's a big part of the issue that we see is and this does happen a lot. We see with a lot of conservative talking heads and, big wigs and all of that is a quickness to try to control the narrative through quick, snappy, gotcha points, simplistic and fallacious logic, but it's a logical step that I can see people taking, But the problem is that it's not followed up with genuine integrity and thought. It does not stand up. It crumbles under its own weight. And we see people being taken in because the years of conservative influence have messed with our education system to the point where people cannot or do not develop critical thinking as part of their education, and instead they're simply told they have to learn how to take a test, and that contributes to the problem even further. So it's unfortunately there's a lot of different layers to it. So should the government pressure TV supporters to ban or suppress media companies that they don't like? Hell no, they should not. Absolutely not. That is a dictator's move. But there is a fundamental problem that we see with our leaders manipulating a narrative to try to control and coerce, and instead of empowering and creating a people that can actually think for themselves, all they're doing is just churning out, people who will just jump into one echo chamber or another, who will blindly follow people like Andrew Wakefield, even though every criticism they mount against big pharma and everything is everything that Andrew Wakefield was guilty of. And so there is a fundamental problem. And while this question is a good question, there's a lot more layers, I think, that need to be discussed to it, and a lot more nuance that needs to be brought to the table for this to be a fair question.
So I actually think this is a fair question, personally. I think the wording is silly. I think the wording on it saying, oh, do you support government putting pressure on things they don't like? So things they don't like is a broad term that I just wouldn't use. So in my world, the answer is, should the actual government create laws to put pressure on TV providers? The answer is yes. But it should be something that is done through a conceded, our collective effort through the Senate and through, the House. It shouldn't be a president, let's say, making an executive decision. And I know in the past, a president can make their opinion known. And I will leave that off to the side for now, because I think they have a right to say their opinion. I think the problem becomes is most presidents should be smart enough to not say their opinion on certain things. But excuse me, if we're talking about should the government provide pressure, the answer is yes, but it should not do it through withholding funding, forcing people to not have the ability to get taxes done a certain way or refunds. They should do it through the actual government body putting to a vote things they don't like. And it shouldn't be Newsmax, right? They shouldn't just go, oh, we're going to ban Newsmax or Fox News. No, we're going to say on public airways. And they do this all the time. And a lot of people didn't like it in the 70s and 80s. And I agree, there always has to be oversight in this and that. Because people didn't like the Satanic Panic, and they didn't like the fact that they were going, nope, you can't listen to Manson. You can't listen to Slayer, as you can see in the background. Yeah, you can't listen to Megadeth, right? Because these are wrong. So they put adult ratings on them. And as a parent who has young kids, I've let my kids watch things that are rated 17 or older when they weren't 17 or older. But that's a parent choice, right? I let my kids listen to almost any music they want as long as it doesn't support Nazis. That's one rule in the house. If I hear your music and it supports Nazis, it's done. It's not even going to be a question. I'm going to get rid of it. But if they want to rate Slayer or some of these other bands as, mature rated, explicit tag, okay, whatever. Should a parent have to go to the store and buy it for your 17-year-old? Probably not. But whatever. I mean, fine. I will do a few of those things if it makes the rest of society more comfortable. So when the government does those things, and this is where I get really pissed off, is that they arbitrarily made some of these decisions about music they felt that was satanic in the 80s. What I would recommend now is that we look at things that are aggressively racist. We look at things that are aggressively misleading, that don't use critical thinking skills and want to push it. Because all it says is, oh, I'm a corporation. that is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And go, guess what? I can now say whatever the fuck I want without real evidence. And that's how the fuck we get into the exact same scenario that we were in with Trump spreading his false lies and creating an insurrection. And yes, I promised a little while ago we'd do an episode on insurrections in the world. And we're going to do that. I'm doing the research right now and building a history doc for that. And we might have a historian on. I don't know. We'll see. But the idea that the governments can't put pressure is the silliest thing in the world, because that's what we pay these fucking assholes to do. I just would rather it go through a voting means or a regulatory means. That's it.
Yeah, creating a universal set of rules. That's why I mentioned the Fairness Doctrine and the Equal Time Act. Like, essentially, it requires everyone to follow the same set of rules. You want to allow invocations before local city meetings or whatever, then you got to let every single group who wants to do one, Satanists and all, do theirs. So like it's a blanket thing that we all have to abide by. It's a, the First Amendment with a couple of tweaks and things here and there. It sounds like a good place to go. I don't know. It's like, if you're going to leave all the guns unlocked and just on the table, or are you going to create some kind of set of rules?
Even if they're
throw a little more fire in there,
guns, and you can display them proudly in your house, whatever.
No.
But, I don't agree with that, but some people do. So
yeah, it's money and free speech. If you have more money, you have more free speech. Rich people on Fox News and all that kind of stuff.
We do have the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules.
I don't think that's the golden rule, my friend.
Watch a ladder.
The golden rule is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. So, and I actually approve of that when it comes to this type of thing. So if we start banning things that the majority feel are immoral, we have to then turn around and say, how do we educate the public on these other things? And,
absolutely.
I mean, if you think about it, go back to the 50s.
Uh-oh.
And somebody posted a picture this week of a letter they received that they couldn't be admitted to Emory University in the United States because they were black. And it tells them, here's your rejection letter, and it's because we don't allow, I won't say the word, but, they don't allow...
Does it start with N?
Here. Yeah, but it's not the same type of N word that you would, think of. But anyway...
It's a Spanish word for black.
Yes. And the...
I know.
He's just trying to get me to say it, and I'm not going to do it.
No.
So,
I would never get you to say it. I was just being a smartass.
Okay. Fair enough. Anyway, so that was the moral standing at the time, right? These people morally believe, and hence why we need a more diverse culture, hence why we need to have a lot better community based. Like, we got to stop electing old ass white dudes to these commissions. We need younger people, and we need a cultural diversity. And yes, there is an uptick in women in there, but if you look at the two parties, even that, like, how many of the women were minorities that ran for Republican seats? Not very many. And I get that, people not everybody thinks that they can run or do these things or not, but they can. And the problem is we don't support those people. Like, I could probably run for a public office if I really wanted to. I don't have a record, right? So I could do that. But do we need another bearded white male with an anger problem to fucking, run for an office? Probably fucking not. Am I going to do some of the dumb things? No. But it doesn't mean that it is. And that's where the discussion of, well, am I to use my privilege? And now we're tangenting here, but do I use my privilege to make better for the world? And in my personal worldview, it's no longer airplane sailing. It's no longer me that needs to be that person individually, right? Can we have a podcast here? Yeah, do I hope it gets viewed by lots of people and people come support us on Patreon so that we can keep doing a lot of these fancy things, and maybe when we could travel again, we could travel to places. Sure. Do I?
Maybe
think
we could
that
talk about
need-
Boeing. If the airplanes do this.
All right, fair enough. I don't. Okay, moving past that.
The
comment that flew over my head.
777s got grounded this week because they dropped half of an engine on a house.
Oh, all right. Well, fair enough. That's probably a good thing to do. But that's the thing is like there's other people that can run that are just as intelligent as me and have just as good of ideas and have charisma and personality. It does not need to be my dumbass, and that's my problem. Is because until we
Well, we've
change
done
that,
white dudes.
yeah.
We've
do
done white
something
dudes.
else.
Yeah.
Let's
let
try something
let's let
else.
white women and minority dudes be in charge for a bit. I'm okay with it. I think they'll treat me okay because I hope that I treat them okay, and that should be a society that we would all be comfortable in.
We had a white dude in office who ignored what we're going to talk about in our next segment, COVID-19. And yes, I this will be a very short segment. This is nothing more than a quick update, but I was so excited when I read this yesterday. I had to include this.
Yeah, I read it too.
In here, I was just
awesome.
very, very excited because, and I love the article tricking the coronavirus with a fake handshake. And I think about what my daughter does. Sometimes she comes up and like goes, "Hey, let's have a high five, Dad." And you do it. She pulls it away all slick, and you're like, "Whoa, child, you're throwing some shade there, girl."
Let's create trust issues in the family. I mean, that's oh man, just in public. If she did it in public, I would be mad the whole ride home.
That's hilarious.
That's funny though. I would laugh. And you know what's funny? Like in our house, like we try not to do jump scare things because I am very jump scare-ish. Sober. I'm very jump scare-ish. And so like, and you can ask my son this. One time he came out of the bathroom, and I was doing the dishes, and I wasn't paying attention. I was talking to myself in my head because I do that sometimes. Like I'll have a conversation. Like sometimes I'll try to work out as an episode segment in my head. I'll be like, "Oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to talk about this. All right, how do I remember it? I'm going to repeat it 7 or 8 times to myself." And I turn around the corner, and he's like, "Hey, Dad," and he waves his hands like this, and I was like, wham! And I punched him right in the balls. Like, I didn't even mean to. He scared the shit out of me. Like, did not mean to. Honestly, did not mean to.
That's one of my favorite candid cam videos of all time. There's a video of they were doing like a jump scare thing in like high schools. And they did this like he's like the tallest basketball player on the team, and this guy jumps out of a garbage can, and that guy drops him back into the garbage can.
And that's fair. Like we try not to. Their one rule is if you have a death fear, you don't mess with people. So mine.
Oh man, no snakes. No snakes.
No snakes.
No.
And the rule is if you ever brought a live snake into my house,
we step on snake.
Yeah, if you brought a live snake in my house, I can't. I don't wear shoes or socks in my house at all. Like that would make everything worse. And like so, in my house, you don't fuck with a snake. No, you don't. And I'll warn you, if you come to my house with a snake, there is a possibility you might be dead. Like I'm not gonna lie and say that my reactions are 100% involuntary. Like just talking about this will probably give me a nightmare tonight. So we're gonna move past jump scares because that's the thing we're gonna do.
All I know is that when I resigned from the circus, I said to myself, "I'll never travel with my snake again." Like, who shows up at other people's houses with snakes? Like, is that a real thing? Is this a rational fear that you have there, my good sir? The roving Jehovah's Witnesses with snakes? Is that
like
is that
the
a thing
daughter that
in
finds
Zealand?
one in the backyard, thinks it's cute, wants to show it to me. That's more of
Yeah,
it.
that's
or
awesome.
the son that's a teenager that thinks it would be funny to get a pet snake just to fuck with dad. That's a thing that was discussed at some point in this house.
Jesus.
Yeah. There's a reason I live in the north and not in the
No
south.
Snake.
Yeah.
No
Lots
snake.
less of them. Like, and that's why I want to go to Canada. There's even less of them in Canada
It's
than
true.
there is here. And
All right,
true.
so what the hell
love
did they find about COVID and handshakes?
They did not shake.
I know the
hands
story.
with
It's a
snakes.
rhetorical
Snakes
question.
Snakes don't
He
have
just wanted to get us
hands.
back on track.
So what they did is they found that they've been testing this, and they found that there is a specific protein that can be linked together to trick the virus that inside of itself that will not allow it to replicate, right? So like it's I don't understand 100% how it does it, but it's somehow taking a protein and binding it with another protein and saying, hey, hold on a second, stop what you're doing, because we're going to go have some fun together, but I don't want you to procreate because we can't have any more of you around. And it's tricking it because I'm guessing that it's taking it into the bedroom and just shooting it, saying you're a Nazi, go fuck off. I don't know. Like that's the vision in my head.
The virus is looking for things that are essentially receptor proteins. Like these are the things that the virus is like. When you taste something, like your tongue, your taste buds are looking for a specific thing. They all have different abilities. They can't taste multiples. There's one that they connect to, and when that flavor hits your tongue, that the cells in your tongue are like, that's salt, that's bitter, that's sweet, and they're in different spots on your tongue. Same thing with your nose, the nasal receptors. Like they are specifically designed to catch certain kinds of proteins. Viruses, viri, whatever, are very similar to that insofar that they have specific things that they will bind to, and your immune system works in the same way. They have receptors that they stick out there that they use, and so it's keys and locks. It's just a whole bunch of keys and locks everywhere, and this is a particular key that fits into a lock that these guys sent out there. So when the virus sees, hey, that's my key, that's where I put my key, it puts its key in, and once it's in, it essentially traps that virus in place, and it cannot replicate anymore. Because one of the things you'll hear is the spike protein. The spike protein is the protein that connects to cells, and it essentially inserts into the cell and allows it to pierce the membrane wall and dump in a whole bunch of genetic material, which replicates inside of the cell. And then when the cell bursts open, you have a whole bunch of brand new little virus. And so this is a protein that connects to SARS-CoV-2 and basically stops it from using the spike, locks it in place, and it just dies. Apparently like a normal cellular death. I wasn't sure if this was actually like any kind of like detrimental particular process, but like it keeps the SARS-CoV from doing anything, but just connecting to like it's like a white blood cell or whatever that's floating around, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I think that for me, that was what drew me to this article. And we could get into the study that was published last month, but I don't know. Like, again, sometimes, like we did at the beginning of the show, where we got excited about science and Mars, and I love outer space stuff. Like, I really do. Like, and it's funny because my stepson loves it too. So, like, he came home, and it was funny because I'm like, I found that article, and then I put it in the doc, and my son came home, and he was like, hey, I got to show you something. And I was like, could you just text me? He's like, yeah, I know, but I want to show you. Here. And he like holds his phone up and it's playing the audio from it. And it was just kind of funny because him and I've talked, cool. Like if they start going back to allowing like in-person, lunches, I think that would be a fun trip to go see a rocket launch in Florida, even though there's a lot of snakes down there. And but him and I talk about that. And it's just kind of funny because of all the things we bond on, for whatever reason, space is a big thing for him. He loves space stuff. And anytime something new comes out about space, he gets involved with me. And I told him, you're short enough, you could be an astronaut, dude. Like, get off your ass. Go be a fucking astronaut, dude. Like, go see space. I'll never be able to do that. I don't know if he actually is short enough. I don't know what the requirements are. But, anyway. You know
what they'll find? They'll find snakes on the moon, so you can't.
Oh my god, that's a Rick and Morty episode. Don't even fucking talk about that. There's a Rick and Morty episode in season 4.
There is. There's an entire planet of snakes.
Oh my god! And my son texted me when they released that episode. And he goes, "Don't watch the Rick and Morty tonight." And I'm like, "Fuck, I'm already doing it." And he's like, "Damn it, Dad." He's like, "We're never gonna hear the end of this, are we?" And I'll tell you, I've only watched that episode 3 times since it released last year. It's Rick and Morty.
Terrible.
It's 3.
It was a really good episode.
It's a really good episode.
Even animated cartoon snakes.
Yeah. because it's a snake. It doesn't bother me
It's
as
a
bad as a real
snack.
snake. I'll be
I'm
honest
a
with you.
snack.
In the after show, I'll tell
Yeah.
you the horror story of what my buddy thought was a funny thing to do to me. So we'll wait till the after show. So if you're not a Patreon, there is a link that is scrolling at the bottom. You can
There's an
join us on
incentive.
Patreons. We release an after show episode every week or two. On our Patreon only, it's exclusive to those, and so as much as $1 an episode, you can hear usually my insane, crazy fears or the rants we go on about why eggs are the worst thing in the world, or sometimes we do a music loving episode. I don't know.
I see Hannah.
is.
I see Hannah getting ready to pounce. He's gonna start
Nope.
flicking his tongue, letting his eyes do
snake.
that weird blinky thing.
Yeah, he's done that before. It's 100% a real thing. I've seen him do it. I have proof. I could show you in the after show.
I don't doubt
All
it.
Down. Starts downloading torrents of snake videos.
Don't you don't have I could ban you from this, so
Ruh-roh.
you can't share anything. Oh man, they blocked my access. This sucks.
So I think we had something else to talk about, didn't we?
We did. The next segment was the Texas grid, right? And I think we have to talk a little bit about this before we get into our quick saves. And I say this because and I know John Oliver did this whole thing on it. And I'm
Yeah.
some of me likes the history.
What's your 10,000-foot view of like what's going on? I think that's pretty much what we're looking for here.
I feel for the people of Texas. I really do. It is it's disturbing that this has happened. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that the former mayor of Colorado, Texas's statement. Basically, he came out and said, nobody owes you anything. If you're sitting there waiting for the power to come back on because you're lazy, that's a you problem. And you know that there's these problems, then you need to be the one to deal with them. It's not our responsibility. And it's like, what you were elected as, right? Yeah, and all of that, bootstrap bullshit
in it too.
Well, yeah, because if he doesn't do that in Texas, then he doesn't maintain credibility. This was actually a good conversation that I had with my the co-host that I used to work with on my old show, because she lives in Tennessee, and of course she's born from New York, so she was used to snowy weather. But it snowed, and it was like an inch of snow, and her son's school shut down. And like a typical Canadian who's used to, we get snow. We've had snow in every month of the year in my lifetime, so it's just a thing that for me I'm used to. But it shut down the town she lived in, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, "It's an inch of snow. Like that's nothing. Like what the hell's going on? Like come on!" And I'm of course cracking wise about it, and she goes, "Well, they don't normally have this weather, so they don't have the infrastructure for it." And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, well, I'm just an asshole who doesn't think these things through, so calm down. Because to be honest, like when I was hearing about everything going on in Texas, it's just like, that in a place where they're used to having good temperature, what's like a good average temperature that you would see in Texas?
I don't think it gets below 50, 55
No,
degrees on
that's a
average
lie.
in Texas.
That's a lie. No. Last year,
On average.
Nope. Last year, I was down in Texas for work before Corona hit, and it definitely got below 50 a lot when I was there. And I was there for 2.5 months, every week.
Wow.
All week long. Flew back, came down Monday morning, flew back Thursday or Friday.
So they're used to on average for like a daily average.
But they're used to above freezing, right?
It was above freezing, yes.
But it was still cold.
30 to 4. Like we hit frost on the window. Like we hit a couple 32s, easy 30s and 32s. But it wasn't like we had precipitation to the point of it was just the frost, right? Now,
yeah.
I will tell you twice when we were down there, it did actually rain enough that it froze. And I know this because people were talking about it the day before in the plant. Like, people were like, hey, so what are you going to do with your day off tomorrow? I'm like, we don't have a day off tomorrow. What are you talking about? Oh, we're not coming in. Did they make an announcement I don't know about? Like, I don't want a day off because I'm down here to work. And what am I going to do? Sit in my hotel room? Like, and it was funny because I ordered extra food because I didn't think you could, like, everybody made it out to be this hell. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, it was like the apocalypse was happy. And, like, people were shutting restaurants down early. The lady at the motel, her and I were talking, and she's like, yeah, I got to work the third shift tonight. And I was like, well, hopefully they gave you a room. Oh, we're booked solid. I'm like, what? Well, where are you going to sleep? Like, how are you going to go home? She's like, I don't know. I was like, will they have a room in the morning that you can sleep in? Because if you can't drive, everybody's like, you can't drive. And it's like, I ordered 2 pizzas. This fat guy talk. But I ordered 2 pizzas.
Wait, so like they said you can't drive. Was it literally like just a sheet ice?
No. Well, yeah, for about an hour. It was like an hour. Maybe overnight in the middle of the night, I could see it. But like, I got up at 6:30 and I went downstairs and I went outside and I was like, all right, it's icy. And, you know, they called work off. They put it off to 10. But by 8:30, like, I went back upstairs, went back to bed, got up at 8:30, showered. By 9 o'clock, I'm working, doing emails. I go outside. I'm like, it's 10 o'clock. I'm bored. I'm going into work. Like, I'm going to go get something done because why sit at a hotel? Like, so I took my extra pizza and chicken wings to work and just gave it to whoever came into work. I was like, hey, I bought extra food because you guys all told me it was apocalypse happening. But so there's free pizza.
Did they throw
and
any
wings.
salt? Did they have any salt or throw anything down?
They don't have that.
That's what
they don't have that.
So that's what it is.
That's why it's a crisis. Is that?
So if
But
the ice
it
is on the
fast.
roads, so if the ice is on the roads and it stays there for a couple of days, they essentially have no way to de-ice these roads, which is part of the reason. Like, the infrastructure we're talking about here is that they're not set up to deal with prolonged ice. You know what I mean? That's basically what the situation was here.
Exactly. And there's been all of the water main breaks that we've seen going on. If you take a look at some of the pictures, there are people who like have ice on their walls inside their houses. And I mean, these are houses that aren't built to insulate against this type of weather. So the pipes aren't insulated to accommodate for the potential for this, because like here in Canada, I know that once we hit like September, October, I need to turn off the water main outside just to make sure that, you know, there's no chance of it happening. There's no guarantee it would happen, even though we just had a cold snap where Celsius and Fahrenheit were kind of like, hey, look, we're the exact same. That's how cold it was. But we would want to, just because it's one more safeguard against that happening.
And turn off the main. You actually go off and turn off the main line.
We have a valve inside the house. Like, we don't turn off the water to the house. We actually turn off the water that goes outside. So the pipes that would take the water to our hoses and shit like that.
Oh, we do the same thing in Michigan.
Yeah. So,
I have to do
but
that every year.
that wouldn't be something that you typically think of in a place like Texas. You kind of see it doesn't really fluctuate to the same extent where you would need to have some sort of a safety net. And finding out that, you know, of course, Ted Cruz had this whole, you know, pot shot that he took at California when they were having their blackouts, and then all of a sudden his privatized power system failed because it was garbage.
All right. So hold on. I'm going to stop you because this is where we get to debate a little bit, and I like a healthy debate.
Ooh.
So so just so you know, Ted Cruz on Twitter actually responded to his comments about California.
Oh, did he?
And he basically said, when you're wrong, you're wrong. I got nothing to say. Like, he ate it. Like, I hate that guy with a passion. But let's be honest, man. Like, that was pretty. That's
he did
pretty
eat
dope.
that one.
Like,
he ate that brown egg, and he ate it hard.
Yep.
I'll give him that. But and then he got busted. And actually, one of the funniest things that I saw, is because, as I mentioned a little while ago, is there was a big problem when it was found out that a lot of conservative Alberta politicians had left the country, and they were trying to, you know, like justify it and say, we didn't do anything wrong, blah blah blah, even though they had told, you know, their constituents that they couldn't see their families at Christmas. Somebody said, you know, Ted Cruz, you can tell Ted Cruz was born in Alberta because he's a politician who fled his state when things got cold. And it's just like, and it's not even wrong.
Fair
All
enough.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's
yeah.
fine. So like,
So yeah,
I want to point out one thing you said earlier.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about this because they essentially, the article, this talks about why the power grid is down in Texas, right? And it has a whole, big thing about why they were, and give me a second here, but why they are supposed to be connected to a federal regulation, this and that. Why, if something goes down, they could be helped, this, and that. Now, with that being said, we could spend all night talking about this and that, yeah, it's pretty silly they did this. And yeah, Ted Cruz is one of the main, perpetrators of this feeling. But let's be honest, Keith. Let's talk about this because, and this is where I want to debate a little bit, and maybe we agree, but I think we're going to debate. I like the debate. Just a little bit. Eggs suck. And, you said earlier Texans don't think about going and turning their water off outside, and they might not even have a house that allows you to disconnect the water to your hoses or any of these other things, right? That's a fact. You said that.
I don't think I said
Sort
made it quite as specific. Just trying to say that because it's not something that is required due to the climate, it's not something you're as likely
they're
to
not
find.
used to doing. Yeah.
It's not habitual. It's not something that really crosses their mind because it's not something that is familiar and happens all the time, right?
Yeah, it has never happened in Texas, to my knowledge. They've never had pipes burst because of freezing cold to that extent, ever.
Yeah,
Right.
not to like a complete and total almost state level thing, but like I know they've had colder temperatures, but this I'm not entirely certain if this is a record low, but
zero.
Well, I know what I mean. It's like state record levels for record keeping or whatever. But either way, this is a long one. And then you look at new builds and new regulations and stuff like that. They just weren't ready for it.
So, but I want to go back to that, and I agree that the levelness ready is very silly, personally. But let's go back to this because basically you're telling us, and this is where I actually disagree with the populace on this quite a bit.
Oh, come on.
All right. When they made a decision to privatize their grid and not accept federal power, it was based on the statistics that they had. Now, they also did it because of money. There was a money thing involved, and I don't agree personally with that aspect of it, but I understand the logic of it because as a fiscal conservative would have a conversation with you about, do we really need this? Now, here's where we have a failing between state federal regulations, and when we had a commander-in-chief who believes states should make all their own decisions, even though that's against the conservative party most of the time. Like, that's a libertarian idea. Because of that, when we look at these different types of things, we have to at least, not only should we be sympathetic to these people and to the people that they elect, but we should understand that because statistics don't explain these other things, they didn't have a need to be connected. And this is where I am a lot more sympathetic in saying, yeah, I understand they left the grid, and yeah, that's pretty stupid, to be honest with you. But if you're looking at it, and this is a poor person talking here, right? I've had months in my past where I had to choose, do you pay to feed your children or pay your $400 electricity bill? What are you going to pay? And how much can I pay to not get my electricity shut off this month, right? And yeah, I could turn my air conditioning off and reduce it to $300 or $250 because you still got to fucking run fans, Yeah. So you got to understand, like, if you take that mentality and understand, is this a needed thing, right? It's okay that they made the decision to leave. Now, where I disagree is that they allowed it to be privatized and used as a for-profit entity, where it should have just been kept as a state entity, like we see like in a Norway example, right? Where they invest in stocks, which I don't agree with, but that's what they do to fund their retirement benefits and all that bullshit.
Yeah.
The state could have done that with this. And I'm a fucking far left person. I'm a social anarchist to some extent, right? I'm pretty left. And I'm saying they should have the ability to do this unless we figure out how to change the federal grid so that when we connect the two together, we don't have all these private companies. And I'll tell you, Keith, and I know maybe because you're not from America, in fucking Michigan, we have private companies that run our electricity. It's not fucking federally or state owned. So here's the problem. We're sitting here bitching about Texas for disconnecting, but for fuck's sake, we aren't going back to the states or the federal government saying, why don't we just regulatize this whole fucking nation, and there's no longer a capitalistic intent, period. So you can't blame the people that want to use capitalism to their benefit to save some fucking money. Wherever the money went is inconsequential, but you can't bash the people that are looking at this side of things when the big picture up here is a failure. So I can't go to go down to Texas and be like, yeah, you guys should have been on the federal thing. You never would have had this problem. Because it doesn't mean the federal government or some other entity that the federal government pays wouldn't be charging Texas billions of dollars right now to funnel fucking electricity into Texas. You want to fix this? Let's go fucking socialist. And that's all I'm saying. Let's socialize the fuck out of this and get rid of capitalism.
I don't want to be misunderstood because that's definitely not what I was saying.
I see three people, and I guarantee you the socialist angle for all of the utilities is definitely a place where we all agree.
Well, yeah. It may not have been the best.
You're arguing them apart, though, Keith. You understand why I'm doing this, right? The discussion is because the argument you're using, the discussion points you're using, are.
You're saying that I attacked the people, though, and I didn't, because I know better. I mean, I stood up and I
elected officials that are making a decision based on a capitalistic intent. And look, them partnering with the federal grid is not much better. It's still a capitalistic intent. They're still all ran by this capitalist bullshit companies that are going to recharge Texas for it.
Yeah, and that was I'm sorry if that wasn't communicated. That was kind of my issue with it too, is that it was sold off as a something that was not necessarily a need, but it was treated like a luxury, and sold to people who didn't who believed, who bought into what they said, because it made sense, right? And yeah, I can understand why they would want to pursue that, even though it's one of the things that may not have necessarily been in their best interest. And yeah, you're right, the absolute overall failure came right from the top, and that's where we need to start addressing things. But unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. We're just a podcast with a whole lot of listeners, and things like that.
Well,
one of the things we run into with this,
we ain't gonna address it, my friend.
Yeah.
Bernie would have been the closest advocate for this.
He probably would have. He would have definitely been way more comfortable with privatizing the utilities that we're talking about. We've talked about this from internet to light and electricity to natural gas, if it's still necessary. I mean, whatever it comes to, to keep humans alive in their respective locales. And as part of our country, we have allowed humans to live in these areas, right? I mean, the United States is a thing that exists. There's no restrictions in general, aside from places that they've declared as national parks. You get to live in these places. If there isn't a restriction that we've all agreed on, we kind of need to just deal with the responsibility of, hey, there's people that we call our citizens living in these places. They should have basic rights to energy, access to information, and they should also have access to food and housing and healthcare and all of these kinds of things that we say, hey, let's keep humans alive. This is a failure of a specific group of people thinking that they had a better idea, and they had, using a variety of resources and information or whatever, that they were making the right decision. But the insurance plan of socialist living is one of those things where I don't need my house to have tornado insurance until my house is picked up and carried away to Kansas. Away from, you know what I mean? Like in the end, you have insurance and you have a social you have your social network and you have all of the different things that we support and basically insulate ourselves as citizens in our country. And even in Canada, you guys have to do the exact same thing. You're a little bit ahead of the cause as far as basic human rights when it comes to, you know, healthcare and stuff like that. But like, this is a great example of energy being one of those things that helps keep humans alive. And we didn't put enough, you know, backup systems and redundancy into it to where we really said, listen, you guys can privatize to a certain degree, but there's a limit. We have to have access. That if everything shuts off, we have to be able to fix it. We can't just leave you as an island.
The reason they wanted to do it, and if you go through those articles, the reason they wanted to do it is because there's a cost that was coming back to the state, right? And so what if we just said, if the federal government just says, we're going to connect every state and every power grid, and it's free? And you know what? If the feds want to raise taxes on everybody to cover that cost, that's a different discussion.
And get rid of your monthly electricity bill. How much does that cost you for the year?
That's even better.
And like, let's compare.
You're going,
you know what I mean?
You're going way farther down the road. But
I know that, but like,
I'm just saying connecting.
If you're
the
connecting
grids, right?
to the grid,
the reason they didn't want to connect to the grids is because of the cost and what they were going to get billed back for it. And I I actually don't disagree with them. Because it's like, why the fuck do we need this? We've never had this happen before. Now they had it happen because of climate change, you know, and now they're gonna have to bite the bullet. But I also don't think any of these citizens should have to eat any of these large costs either. Like there was an article that was going around about a $10,000 bill. Like fuck you.
$10,000 and $12,000 bills, price gouging from
If we start seeing GoFundMe's for this. And we talked at the beginning of the year. What did I want to do? I want to talk about what do we change? Where do we mobilize? What do we do? This is something that's a big failure in government. And I'm going to show you an article real quick. And I know this is deviating a little bit. Fuck the New York Times and fuck this article. And I'm going to tell you why. Because they're sitting here, and this is where I feel like I'm Jeremiah Bannister or a conservative, you know, pundit right now. But this week, at the collapsed state power grid, Democrats are trying to change the tables. What the fuck? What is wrong with you? Stop it. Stop. Like, this is not our lives, their lives are not a political game. I don't actually give two shits. And I hope the Democrats lose in Texas now. Fuck you. This is bullshit. And like I wrote some of these people in Texas, like I emailed them saying what you're doing and trying to change is bullshit. Right? Yeah. I agree with your overall sentiment that we should be connected to the federal grid. But come on. Why are you pulling the punches now? Why are we digging in? And I'm not saying Democrats are any worse than Republicans in that state.
Well, no, but we have to hold our own accountable too.
If you're a political strategist, right now is the time when you stick all of the blame of this on the leadership of Republicans who have been in charge of Texas since all of these things have been instigated. Like, this is political strategizing. This makes perfect, complete, and total sense if you are in one party. We talked about earlier in this episode that the media shouldn't be one party. We shouldn't be able to go that the New York Times, that's definitely a Democratic position, and this is strategic Democratic people who are making the decisions on what to run here. Like, fairness doctrine, all that kind of stuff. It's like the New York Times messed up. It's gross and it's stupid, but it's the way our system is set up. And you know, when it comes to, you know, states' rights and all that kind of stuff, it's one of those areas where you see hypocritical things happening here. It's just like the Democrats and Republicans are easy to point fingers. We know which group and which party loves to say that states' rights matter until they're trying to make executive decisions at the centralized level, and then state rights don't matter unless they agree with them. Then they do matter because the Republicans have subjective morality as opposed to objective. But in the end, in this case, I mean, we all agree that there should be at least a level of connectivity for the grid for all of the states in the United States and probably throughout Canada as well, where like if everything goes wrong, there has to be a bailout, a switch we hit that can keep people alive. Like there has to be that at least.
Yeah.
Like as much as your political and your philosophical perspective may differ, we have to have some kind of fail safe. And they didn't have a fail safe. They didn't build in for it, and they thought they were good because the worst thing couldn't happen. Why would the worst thing ever happen?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Entropy is real. We're all going to die a cold death, and the universe will end sadly.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm sorry, like, Keith, I'm not trying to make you out as the bad guy. That's not what this whole thing is me saying you are wrong because of this. I'm pointing out the inconsistencies in some of the rhetoric I've been hearing, and I have had to call out, like people because I just like I don't think it's you, and maybe it's a misspeak, and that's fine. And like I said, it's not an attack on you. It's me discussing where I disagree with a lot of people. I don't agree with poking fun at Texas. I don't agree with any of that. I had a problem with some of John Oliver's, stint this week, but my problem is John Oliver.
It's not available in Canada, so I don't know yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, but John Oliver.
I don't watch it till the week after or whatever.
And some of these other things, the problem becomes is that we have this centralized focus on this tiny little thing, and we're not looking at the big problem. And when we want to open up and have a conversation about it, sometimes I feel we need to be a little bit more cautious in how we pursue those things, to the difference of saying, hey, there's a larger problem here, folks. We need to address that. And I hate to be the conservative pundit here, but fuck New York Times this time.
Yeah.
Fuck a lot of people on Facebook and doing their minimal research, and fuck anybody that doesn't actually understand what true democratic socialism is, because we could be a lot farther down the line than we are. And it's kind of funny because, like, I feel like Bernie is the only person, and I hate saying this because I'm not a Bernie bro, but I feel like Bernie put my gloves on and my fucking scarf, and I feel like sitting in my winter coat in my chair saying, fuck you, motherfuckers. Like, it's not, hey, Texas, I told you so. It's, hey, federal government, I told you we should just socialize this and we wouldn't have this problem. Hey, can we just remove the large capital programs that are sucking money away from working individuals and standardize the national grid? Thank you. I'm done. Boom. Birdie out. Just saying. I don't know. Ugh.
I know.
I'm once again asking you to do better and to be better and to help Texans get on their feet because it's freaking cold.
Yeah. And I will say we could go into the AOC goes to Texas versus Ted Cruz leaves Texas. We could talk about that. That's good. That's a fair discussion. I'm okay with that conversation. But what I'm not okay with is, like, let's as a community and as people, let's move past this. Texas Republicans, you fucked up. Eat some crow. It's not that. It's fucking Americans, y'all fucked up because you voted for Biden. You continue to vote for fucking centrist Democrats, and nobody wants to address the actual real issues in America. With that being said,
what was it? I think it was the first Democratic primary that the only person who said that the most dangerous thing facing the United States today is climate change was Bernie Sanders. Everybody else picked some other socio-political thing. And look at this.
Yep, exactly. I don't know.
Awkward.
It is. It's a little hard. On to our quick saves.
Yay.
This one is the first one.
Yeah.
No, nothing.
So this IUD teen program was a huge deal for Denver, Colorado. They basically they pretty much tested. So, like, one of the things that we've talked about on this show multiple times is that if you give people access to healthcare and access to sex education, and then also access to I'm trying to remember the word for so that access to condoms and access to birth control and everything. Essentially, what you're going to do is by letting children who are becoming teenagers, who are becoming interested in this kind of thing, you're going to essentially educate them to make the decisions for themselves, but you're going to give them tools to protect themselves from bad decisions. And so in 2009, this study just came out. In 2009, Colorado began offering teens free IUDs. And so this is I believe the 3 to 5 year plan that so essentially you can keep from having contraception, that you can keep from having children. And so when they did that, when they allowed it so that teens and girls who wanted to be able to get this contraceptive, they didn't have to have parental consent. They found that teen pregnancy fell by 54%, abortions fell by 64%, and for every $1 spent on this program to fund this program, they saved roughly $6 on labor and delivery and childcare and food stamps. So what we've been talking about for this entire time is that the pro-life movement actually causes more unwanted and unhealthy and unsafe family births and children's situations and in cases where there's going to be like just long-term damage, but giving people access and giving women access to hands-off contraceptives. Just you can choose how it works. It's your body. You know what, even if you're young, mommy and daddy, you know what, they don't have to have a say, because if you don't have a kid, that's different than you getting an STD or something like that. But this is a way for you to have total control over your body. And you can be completely and totally sexually safe and not get an STD and also not have a kid. All of these things really matter. And what we've proven in this study is that essentially you can save money everywhere, and you can actually save lives. If you're going to count, in utero, as soon as the heart starts beating, if you're going to count that, this practice actually saves more lives than you by banning abortion. Like, the statistics for the pro-life community are irrefutable if they would listen to it. But in a lot of cases, they have pro-life but also anti-contraceptive, which is counterintuitive. And so this is one of the most in-depth and really a super high quality article that it just stopped me. I was walking in the hallway, I flipped through it, I was like, man. So I stopped, and I just I got caught up in it. It was just one of those things. It's just like, this is a great chunk of irrefutable, scientifically recorded evidence as to why the idea of pro contraceptive may help people who are in between on the pro-life and pro-choice. Let's just not make that a huge issue. Let's give women the power over their own bodies when they're young, and let's go from there. Maybe we can all agree in that spot and kind of grow from that. And it's just really cool.
It kind of reminds me of a Hitchens quote. The cure for poverty has a name. In fact, it's called the empowerment of women. If you give women some control over the rate at which they reproduce, if you give them some, say, take them off of the animal cycle of reproduction to which nature and some doctrine, religious doctrine, condemns them, and then if you'll throw in a handful of seeds, perhaps, and some credit, the floor of everything in that village, not just poverty, but education, health, and optimism will increase. And honestly, it's a fantastic start. It's another fantastic proof against this whole idea that if you provide it for them, they'll just go out and have more sex and it'll make more problems. It's like, because we can sit there and be like, well, no, actually, if we make it so that they can do this because they're teenagers and they're going to want to explore their bodies and be curious about
the only thing
things,
they needed was was there an STD rise or decrease? Yeah. If there was an STD decrease, then it would just be a slam dunk.
Yeah, and so that was like that alone right there is just proof that just because you give them access to it does not mean it's going to be morally bankrupt or lead to the decay. If anything, it's actually going to assist in the elevation and empowerment. Because what was it? Freakonomics was saying that back in the 70s. Well, yeah, I mean overall, it's going to save lives. It's going to be less problematic in the long run because people have control of their bodies, and we don't have a society that's filled with people who are scraping the bottom because they had a kid that they couldn't afford at a time when they were the most vulnerable and maybe not necessarily the smartest.
Tough. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, look at me. I have 4 of them. So, anyway.
And they're adorable.
Yeah, sure. The next quick save topic is
Scammy payback.
Oh God, this. Now, granted, this is just one account, and this guy only primarily deals with those the scammers who will call you and be like, I'm with Microsoft, and your computer has viruses. The other night, I lost a few hours of my life watching this guy. I'm not gonna lie. Basically, he knows how to reverse hack into these scammers' computers, and what he does is he actually goes through as they're playing around on his virtual computer that he has. They themselves are having all of their files deleted. And another thing that he's done is he actually has gone through and he's helped confront, he worked with another YouTube channel to confront a scammer that he had caught. He's had money, he's returned money, he's contacted victims because, again, he goes in, he finds their files, finds their information. And one thing that I learned from watching his channel, and this is actually a very this whole thing that he does is actually something that really is good, important for me. These scammers, if they get you once, they keep your information so they can hit you up again and again and again and again. But where this starts to become, where this starts to be really something that I become very attached to is the fact that I lived with my grandmother for several years, and she got a lot of these calls. And she fortunately was smart enough to know. And she would be like, oh, well, I'm just going to have you talk to my grandson. And I would mess with them. I would spend a good 5-10 minutes playing around on my laptop or not, pretending I was. And I'd be like, yeah, actually, we don't even have a desktop here. So I don't know what you're seeing, buddy, but it's nothing that you're talking about. You're full of shit. Go get a life. And then a couple of months ago, in Canada, we have a CRA scam where you get a phone call from a ghost number. It usually looks like yours. It never identifies itself as anything that you would actually associate with a government agency. And it's a voiceover recording saying, this is the Canada Revenue Agency. We have a warrant has been issued for arrest. If you ignore this call, it will be seen as a willful act of defiance, and the RCMP will be, investigating you and arresting you and all of that. Now, as somebody who's me, I know that that's bullshit, so I have fun with them. But some of my wife's family members have been hit up by these people for a few $1,000s. And so whenever these people call me, I found a website that provides me with a fake address, fake names, fake social insurance numbers, all of this information. And one day I actually ended up wasting a good hour of their time. And basically, I sit here and I say, I know that there's nothing they're going to do to me. Really, there's nothing in the long run they can do to me because I know that they're full of shit. But if I can keep them preoccupied and not going after somebody who they can manipulate and can get money out of, then maybe I'm doing something that's a little bit better. And so, I mean, for me, I'm not somebody who can really get back at them because they've got layers upon layers upon layers that they hide behind. But I'm at least wasting their time enough that they can't. And this guy goes through, he wastes a lot of their time. He causes problems. He's made a few of them quit on the spot, which is kind of funny. So Scammer Payback, I recommend giving them the guy a shot. His name is he goes by Pierogi, and it's funnier than hell, some of the videos to watch. I think he actually speaks Hindi, so he can even understand some of what the scammers from India anyways are saying. Yeah, he translates it. Yeah, so it's really cool. And I watched it for a good couple of hours the other night. I'm not gonna lie, because it was enamored. I was enthralled.
Yeah, the only question I had, and I have not watched any of this, is who's that?
So he'll sometimes he has that as an avatar for the person on the other line.
Okay, so I figured that. Hold on. I'm going to show you something.
Betty White?
Oh, I was watching that one. Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to pick on this guy, but again, like, what the fuck, man? Why does this dude use black guys or Indian guys for scammers? I'm sorry. Like,
Well, I mean,
those
if
those
they're
are the most
calling, if
common
they're
people
calling,
who.
I don't care.
So I mean,
well, if they're
I see your point.
I mean, from directly from India, or I mean, you
Again,
can tell.
Look, how about this?
I think the big difference.
Does he imitate their accents too?
No.
Or does he play the actual audio?
He actually he plays the audio, and he
Right.
himself uses a voice modulator. So in a lot of his, he plays a grandmother named Vivian.
Which again, I'm okay with to some extent, right?
Well, I the one thing that I will say is that he doesn't use that as a caricature, right? To poke fun at them. I think that's just more of a representation. But again, I could be wrong, and I could just be
You're right.
enabling an asshole.
He probably doesn't. I'll grant you that, Keith. I will grant you that he probably is that out of the loop. But like, if it were me, like, and maybe I'll message this guy and be like, "Hey, let's have a conversation." Like, you could at least vary your people up. Let's just be honest. Like, when your picture is the same guy you keep using in all these other ones, I don't know, man. Like, for me, and again, I don't want to be negative about your quick save. And I know this is Chris just being that, I'm being the PC police here. But for fuck's sake, like, it doesn't look good, and it detracts from what he's like, the really good things that he's actually doing. It's like, I agree with you. Yeah, fuck these people. I'm all for recording the shit out of them, hacking their computers, 100%. That's right in line with what I would do if I was smart enough,
Oh, hell yeah. If I were good enough with my computer, I'd be doing this all the time.
That's not my forte, if you want to be honest. So I don't know. It's a side note. I feel bad that I said anything, but I
see it as a something valid and worth bringing up.
So,
well, we'll reevaluate it later.
There you go.
So what's your quick save?
All right, my quick save this week. So we talked a little bit about the Mandalorian last week in cancel culture. This came across my desk for Pedro, the Mandalorian, essentially. There you go. Yeah, hey,
this is the
shirt?
way.
That's a really cool shirt. I like that shirt. I want that one.
My wife got it
me
for
of
me.
Like a Punisher-ish type shirt. You should buy me and Hannah each one of those.
I've
I've
had people actually call it the Punisher, and I'm like, no,
it's not. Anyway, so he has openly come out and supported his sister, who has come out as transgender, and he essentially has said, "Hey, I support you in what you do and your transition. I believe in you, and I see you as you." And I don't know. For me, that was just kind of a like, I get maybe this is weirdly sentimental. We talked about these things before, and like, Disney isn't calling this out. They're calling Cara Dune out, right? Because
Carano?
She what?
Gina Carano?
Carano.
Who did I say?
Yeah,
Carano.
All right.
Yeah,
Cara Dune
you
is
called her by
her character.
Yeah, you called her by her Star Wars name as opposed to her human name.
All right. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Either way. Yeah.
So the damn it. So, but they're calling out bad behavior, and I think they should also call out good behavior. But that's fine when they don't, because at least he is right. He's coming out saying, "Hey, this is my sister. This is who they are." I'll be honest. I was a little confused whether they're non-binary or whether they identify as a her. I didn't 100% understand that, but what I liked about it was the support saying, "Hey, at least we're moving past this. We got a guy that's older than me that is willing to accept this person, and he's publicly saying it, and he doesn't care, and he doesn't give a fuck if
he's probably never used." He's probably never used they them pronouns ever. Like, this is probably him just doing his best. Well, and like we all,
as I mentioned, have our moments. When we were talking about the Carano thing last week, she did come out and kind of backtrack because she was making fun of pronouns, and she openly admitted, she goes, I spoke with Pedro and he kind of
I remember
educated me
that.
on the subject. And you know, it was
That
nice to
good
see
that
that
she did
because
that,
she
at
likes
least.
she seems to like doubling down on bullshit. But yeah, and I mean, I think having Pedro have this in his life and not only speak just, you know,
That was
as
cool.
somebody who wants to be an ally, but somebody who has is supportive of a family member, especially to this extent. I think that kind of gives a lot of power to it, and so this one really kind of, you know, make my heart melt.
In the past, this could have destroyed a career.
Hmm.
Coming
Yes,
out
and
and
that's
saying you support someone that could have destroyed an actor's career. That's cool.
yep. And that's the nice thing about this is that it's not like a destroying career thing. And that's where we move past that as a society. Like, we no longer look at a moral, you know, entropy of you have to be a male or a female. Like, we can now say, hey, you can transcend these boundaries. And, like, maybe we should do that segment too. We haven't done that in a while. I would have to bring somebody on. I would not feel comfortable doing that by myself. But
Yeah, we definitely need to have someone that's in that world talk about that world.
But yeah, like,
and we can
it's
say,
yeah, and maybe we'll bring Tris on. I've talked to him a little bit online recently, and maybe they'll join us, you know, to talk about it. But for me, it was just kind of a heartfelt story, you know. And yes, it's actually is a little closer to home. It's funny, my son in his high school had not really a friend per se, but an acquaintance. But their mother graduated from high school with my wife, right? And so, like, it was kind of weird. Like, all of a sudden, she started posting stuff, and my wife's like, "Hey, holy shit!" You know, like, their daughter is transitioning. I was like, well, is he playing? What is his pronouns? You know, all these other things. And it's just, it's really cool because they've moved past that. And, like, you know, like, it touches your personal life to some extent nowadays. You know, like, it's no longer a story in the media where I could say, hey, I've met this person, we've had these conversations. And like, the sad thing is until we get more of this, others in the other arenas who disagree with it won't, and I'll call them fringe because that's where I feel this is gone, on the left and on the right is a fringe movement that wants to deny people of what they want to say. These people aren't saying I'm a cat that is part alligator that's a human. I mean, for fuck's sake, that's the stupidest argument I've ever heard. And, like, I won't
slippery
even entertain your
slopes is
discussion.
stupid.
Yeah, I won't. If you claim that, and I look at you and I go, "Are you serious? You want to be a cat? All right, whatever. Like, you ain't getting no special rights for me. I'm not gonna fucking feed and change your kitty litter.
You,
Unless
sir,
that's the king,
are a toilet.
you know? And so,
I don't know.
for me, it just kind of comes down to, you know, like, when I hear those type of things, it's disheartening.
Yeah.
And when I see these type of stories, it's very heartening for me, and I enjoy it.
Pretty cool.
Either which way, thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all. Subscribe, like, join us on Spreaker, Facebook, YouTube, wherever the hell you want to go. Thank you all, and have an amazing night.